Welcome to Trulyfit.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast. Why don't you give my listeners a little background on who you are and what it is that you do day-to-day professionally?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Steve. I appreciate it. I am a professional public speaking coach, although I didn't always start out liking speeches or even being good at them. In fact, I was a freshman in high school and I decided I wanted to be an attorney. And so one of the attorneys that I had talked to said, if you want to be good at being an attorney, you should join a competitive speech and debate team. And so I did. And my very first speech, I can still remember it to this day, was an impromptu speech. And I was supposed to prep for 2 minutes and speak for 5. I prepped for 30 minutes and spoke for 2. And I think there were more ums and uhs in that speech than actual words. Since then, I've kept working on it and went on to win national awards and got to my junior year of high school or of college and interned at a law firm and realized this is not what I want to do with my life. And so I had the, oh no, what do I do with the rest of my life since the plan that I've had since a freshman in high school isn't coming to fruition. And so I graduated college and in my spare time went on to volunteer my time to judge and coach my old collegiate team that I had competed on. And one day my old coach said, you know, if you got your master's, you could go and teach and people would pay you to do this. Like this could be your full-time job. And so that's exactly what I did. I went back and got my master's. I taught at the collegiate level. And I directed my own public speaking program and coached others to win national awards. And through that time, I worked with political candidates and helped them get elected. I worked with executives and people that want to get into leadership, that their job requires them to do more public speaking. And I've also worked with people who want to develop a following but are nervous about giving interviews and talking on camera.
I think that's fantastic. 2 things I really took from that is one, in our industry as personal trainers, people in the fitness and health industry, we've almost all career transitioned. Most people do not want to do this right out of the gate. It's like a hobby, something that they love, something that it's always been a part of. Maybe they were in athletics, maybe they were somebody who just enjoyed the weight room or giving diet advice. And they went into another career and they decided this isn't for me. What else do I love? And they went off to do what they love. So we understand that completely, shifting careers. And secondly, I love how you said you struggled at first and you became better and then you taught people. I find the best coaches aren't the ones who are gifted out of birth, right? They're the ones who learned the tricks and they got better. And that actually holds true amongst almost all professions. Even if you look at things like NFL football, the best head coaches were guys who kind of struggled and played maybe a little bit here and there, but they weren't the best guys because they have to know what it takes, the daily grind to get good and dot all the I's and cross all the T's to become great. So I love how you said that you struggled yourself too before you got great. They say everybody is afraid of public speaking, most people even more so than heights and claustrophobia. Why do you think that is?
I've heard that statistic too. About 75% of people fear public speaking more than death, which is just a crazy statistic, but absolutely believable. And so this fear dates back to our prehistoric ancestors, where living in a group was critical to survival, and being rejected from the group meant death. So we don't want to be left out of the group. But speaking inherently means having the spotlight on us. It leaves us open to judgment. Inherently, we're volunteering to isolate ourselves from the group. So I remember working with my client, Amy, and she was moving into a new role where she was required to give presentations. Like most people, she dreaded public speaking. Her palms got sweaty, her mouth got dry, she had a knot in her stomach every time she spoke. And the more speeches she gave, the more her anxiety became worse and worse, until one day she couldn't take it anymore, and so she gave me a call. And as I worked with Amy to overcome her performance anxiety, I taught her these 3 tips. First, you want to make sure that you practice your presentation. Practice a few times in front of friends and family. You also might want to videotape yourself so you can see areas that you want to see. You can see what your audience is seeing. Second, you want to focus on your message, not your feelings. It sounds really simple, but just the simple fact of shifting your focus to your message will help decrease your nerves. And finally, you want to visualize. Visualize your success. You want to visualize your presentation going well. Now, this is something that famous athletes do, like Michael Jordan. He would watch himself visualize his legs running, the rotation of the ball in the hoop, and he would do it over and over again. If you show someone a picture, a certain part of their brain lights up. And if they close their eyes and they visualize that same picture, the same part of their brain lights up. You see, the trick about visualization is your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually doing it and you visualizing it. And so when you go to actually do your speech, your brain is going to say, oh, I've already done this before. I don't need to be nervous. Because everybody knows the second time you've done something or the 40th time you've done something is so much easier than the first. And so the trick with visualization is you want to be really specific in your visualization. Picture yourself walking up to the front of the room for your exercise class. Visualize yourself going through those first lines and seeing your students as they wait for class to begin. And as you go through that in more detail, it does in fact trick your brain. Now, I know these tips might not necessarily sound earth-shattering, but my clients have come back to me after they've tried out these strategies and are raving about how their fear of public speaking has decreased. In fact, my client Amy said that she was very skeptical, but frankly, she didn't have anything to lose at that point. And so when she came back to talk to me, she said her speech was amazing. She felt calm, she was able to project confidence, and so many people came up to her afterwards and told her what a great job she had done.
Do you think it's best, or maybe it depends on the person, to develop a sort of on-stage personality, for lack of a better term? Somebody who, like, let's go ahead and say I have to present a speech of some sort. Am I just being myself, or do I have to sort of put a show on and become a different person?
In today's day and age, we crave authenticity. And so the best speeches happen, I believe, when you're just yourself. You have an innate, incredible personality, and letting that shine through helps you quickly develop the know, like, and trust factor, which is critical to getting a following. And whether that's following is in fitness, or maybe you're a doctor or a nutritionist, people do business with people that are liked. And so if you get to let people see the real you, then they'll like you. If you're fake, people will see right through that too.
Yeah, well said. Totally agree with that. I think there are certainly people who make that mistake, and they have too much of an on-stage presence as if they're a celebrity or a movie star instead of just being themselves. But part of that, I believe, that leads into my next question, maybe it's because they're just not comfortable. And is it just repetition that gets you there? I mean, according to you, that maybe that's not the case, because like your client Amy had, she did multiple speeches, but before she had the right work behind her, she was still struggling.
Yeah, I have a few tips with regard to that. It's kind of like anything. You can practice and then you can practice the wrong way. And so there are definitely some tips when it comes to helping people to overcome those nerves. So first, I want you to remember that nerves are normal. It shows that you care. It's just when those nerves are debilitating that it becomes problematic. And so you want to use those tips like visualization to help you overcome those. And you want to make sure that you are doing some practice. Sometimes people practice it a couple times and they just think that they are ready to go. You want to practice your speech about starting a week in advance and about 6 times. I had a client, her name was Lisa, and she thought that she was prepared for a meeting, and she called me frustrated that she was stumbling over her presentation content, and she chalked it up to just kind of being a mediocre presenter. And when I asked her how many times she'd practiced, she said she'd done 2 rehearsals, one in the car and one on the way to this meeting. Well, of course it was rocky. Even the most celebrated speakers don't have their material down on the 3rd run through. So speakers who make public speaking look easy, though, are ones that have practiced their craft and their material. And the secret about public speaking is that most speakers are nervous, and most speeches are bad because presenters don't practice nearly enough. So there's a few different tips with regard to practicing that I would encourage. First, you want to use an extended outline or small paragraphs. If you write it out word for word, oftentimes if people lose their place, then they get flustered as to where they were, and it kind of tells your brain that there's only one way to give this speech when there's really multiple ways that you can be giving your speech. Next, you want to make sure that you're familiar with your speech by reading through each bullet point. And so it's kind of like how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. You don't want to read through your speech top to bottom over and over and over again. You want to break it down into bite-sized pieces. So you read through the first bullet point 3 times. And as you read it out loud, then you highlight the key phrases. And then you read it a few more times. And as you do it, your eye is drawn to those key phrases. And if you feel comfortable, you can delete out all but those kind of key phrases. And then your mind will just fill in the remaining part because that's how you've practiced. So you can do this for all of your points and your subpoints. And the other thing that surprises people is that you don't want to start practicing until your outline is totally perfect, because then you won't have time for all your rehearsals. You want to start when you're about 80 to 90% done with your outline. You can still adjust the content of your speech after your initial rehearsals, but it's better to give a speech where both your content and your delivery are at 85%, whereas you don't want to give one that the content's 100% and the delivery is unpolished. So my last tip is that you want to make sure that you start strong. So if you start out great with your presentation, then the rest of it will follow. So how do you do that? You want to practice your introduction more than the rest of your speech. I also encourage memorizing the first 4 words of your speech, because that ultimately allows you to have your eyes up looking at your audience, and you're able to establish that connection right away with them.
Are there, speaking of establishing that relationship with the audience, are there facial cues or mannerisms or tics or things that people typically do that you advise against? Or does that come down to, again, them just being a part of themselves and allowing them to be authentic?
You know, when I worked with one of my political clients, these are the tips that I told him. I said that you want to think about the camera as a good friend. Oftentimes, people find the camera intimidating, but if you think about it as a good friend, then your facial features will relax and you'll have a better recording. Sometimes it even helps, it sounds kind of silly, but to tape a picture of your friend behind the camera so that you can look at it while you're speaking. You want to remember to keep your eyes on the camera. Even if you can see yourself, maybe turn off the mirrored part of your video so that it helps with that distracting element. You also want to have a big smile and be energetic with your facial expressions. You want to amplify those emotions when you're on camera so that you're interesting and engaging. Also, make sure that you have good posture. You want to sit up straight. If you lean back, that conveys disinterest. And if you sit too far forward, you could look too intense. You also want to videotape yourself before you tape yourself for real, and then watch it back, so that way you can make adjustments. Maybe you'll need to tilt your head, or maybe you'll need to smile more. Or maybe you thought that you were being really energetic and you came off really monotone. Having those practice sessions helps you make those adjustments.
Makes perfect sense. Good advice. You know, as fitness professionals, we do a lot of group fitness. So I've taught classes anywhere from 5 people to 150 people in one large class. And I do know that people will get nervous before those classes start. You did give a really good tip to say, remember the first 4 words of your speech, but do you have any other tips as far as when you're first starting out, let's say in a group fitness class and you're in front of anybody or all of those people, is there something to either think of or tell yourself prior to talking to them so you're not as nervous?
The first thing you want to think about is to remember that all of these people have come to this class because you're the expert. And so you have something that you want to share with your audience. And at the end of the day, they came to have a class from you. And so remembering that your audience is your friend, they're there on your side, can help with those nerves. You also want to think about, as you walk to the front of the room before your class, you want to take a big, deep breath. And that way the serotonin releases in your brain and it helps to lower your pulse. You want to look around the room and smile. And tips to introduce yourself. You want to practice your self-introduction in advance. I found it great to arrive early and connect with a few people before class. It helps calm your nerves. It helps you not think of them as a big scary audience, but you've already made some friends and established some connections, and that helps with your nerves as well. And make sure you give a big enthusiastic greeting. Good morning, and say your name and maybe an interesting fact about you, and then discuss the structure of your class. If you sound enthusiastic and excited to be there, your audience will be excited about what you're saying as well. I also want you to think about some cognitive reprocessing about stress. So if you look at a roller coaster and you label it as fear, then you're going to be afraid every time you look at a roller coaster. But if you look at that same roller coaster and you think of it as exciting, then you'll be excited to go on that roller coaster. Now, the same is true for giving speeches, whether it's at your exercise class or maybe a nutrition program. If you think of your class as stressful and anxiety producing and nervous about it, then every time you go to teach that class, that's what you're going to think. But instead, if you think of it as, this is an opportunity for me to share my knowledge, all these people are here because they want to be able to learn from me, that will help your nerves decrease. Positive thoughts help decrease your performance anxiety. Ultimately, your brain just wants to prove you right. So if you think it will go well, then that's a great step to helping it actually go well.
Great information. Yeah, I do think too, people are intuitive. They sense your energy and they can tell when you're happy and you're excited and you're having fun. So I always make sure to have a smile on my face, like you mentioned earlier, and be really happy in front of the people and set the mood, start chit-chatting with people before the class and just get everyone to be comfortable and relaxed. I think it's easier in that sort of a setting than it is, let's say, in a speech, a political speech in front of a camera where you have to be serious. So I always take advantage of the fact that this isn't serious. This is just fun. We're having fun. We're in a fitness class. So let me brighten up the mood and make sure it's fun. I call myself sometimes an entertainer instead of an entertainer. You have to use those skill sets to entertain people. Speaking of that, we just talked a little bit about being in front of people, maybe being in front of a camera, maybe writing a speech. Are there major differences between all of those, like an oral speech and a written speech?
The biggest difference between a written speech like an email and an oral speech is the ability for your audience to reread a sentence. So if you're reading an email and you zone out or you didn't understand a sentence, you simply reread it. However, if you're listening to a speech and you start thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, you can't really ask the speaker to go back and state what they just said again. And so if you have a key idea that you want the audience to remember, you want to make sure that you repeat that phrase a few times over the course of the speech. When you go to write your speech, you also want to write your speech like you're thinking to a friend. I heard this the other day that we've heard of writer's block, but no one has ever heard of speaker's block. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I have no idea what I'm going to say today. You just start talking and words just come out of your mouth. And so if you take the topic and you think about how you would talk about it to a friend, you'll find that your speeches are much easier to write.
You kind of hinted at this in the beginning, but do you think, and I'll be slightly leading with this question because I do think that it's a huge mistake to not have some sort of presence on a camera, to not get good at public speaking, to not show who you are. A lot of fitness professionals sort of hide behind pictures in the Instagram life, but like you alluded to before, I think allowing to hear somebody's voice, see their facial cues and mannerisms, and associating them with like an expert in a certain area, seeing them on camera, for some reason, it just allows me to trust them more.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Steve, that you need to have videos. First, on social media, the algorithm is designed to favor videos because it keeps people on their platform longer. This extra attention then results in more conversions and sales, which means more revenue. So if you want to encourage potential customers to follow you and buy a product or service, then you definitely need to be on video. In fact, per an article on LinkedIn, 84% of people have been convinced to buy a product or service by watching a brand's video, whether that's a traditional brand that we think of or maybe an influencer. Second, to develop a following, you need to have the know, like, and trust factor. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and that all happens so much faster when they get to see you and they get to know your personality from video. You'll attract your followers and repel those that aren't a good fit. In our post-COVID world, more people are watching video content. In fact, Forbes reported that marketers who use video are growing their revenue 49% faster than non-video users. 49%. It's no wonder that more people and businesses are using video as a marketing tool. So when you do go on video, you want to focus on storytelling techniques. If your marketing material comes off as too salesy, it will turn people off. However, storytelling is engaging, it's memorable, it has emotional and psychological appeal, and this allows you to create that deeper connection with your audience. Think about it. We relate to each other through storytelling. At the end of the day, you're going to go home to your family and tell stories about what happened during the day. As author and blogger Seth Godin said, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell.
Could you tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind, you mentioned it earlier on, you took a public speaking, I guess you called it like course of some sort, where you were injected into having to make these speeches. Were they debates? Were you against people? Were you being graded? How exactly did this work out?
That's a great question. Yes, it was a speech and debate club. So I did some debate, and so there we would be given a policy, and that policy, the first one, my freshman year in high school, we were debating agricultural policy. And so I got to learn all about agricultural policy and subsidies, and I got to be really good at crafting arguments and being able to read my audience. And there was also a speech program as well. And so there I did some impromptu speaking, and I did some dramatic speeches that are kind of similar to acting, and some speeches you write, like a persuasive speech. And so kind of throughout the course of my time being in a competitive speech and debate program in high school and college, I competed in a variety of different kind of events and categories, and I learned different skills through all of them that I still use to this day, and I still use when I'm coaching.
Yeah, that sounds really helpful.
Well.
I know there are adult clubs like that. There's actually a name that evades me. You might know the name of like local speaking clubs. Toastmasters, yeah. Have you ever been to one? Do you recommend that? Do you think it is advantageous for professionals or just people in general, the general public?
I haven't ever been to one. I hear good things about them. I think if there's one in your local group, it's worth checking out. I also offer a digital course that I've created and some one-on-one coaching as well.
Tell us about exactly what you do, one-on-one coaching. Is it all virtual? Do you do some in person? Is it package-based? Do some people just call you on a whim and say, hey, I'm writing a speech for a wedding. I'm really nervous about it. I want to review it with you. How exactly does the process go?
So yes to all of those. I work with virtual clients. I also work face-to-face with clients. I offer workshops for corporations as well. And I can help everything from the brainstorming step of I have a speech to give at a wedding and I have no idea what to say, all the way through I've already written this speech, but can you please review it and help me with my delivery, and kind of everything in between. And so that's how the one-on-one coaching goes. I've also created a digital course, and it's been said that all speech is public as long as you're talking to someone else. At the end of the day, you want the person to have respect for you and value your ideas. And so strong public speakers know how to command the room and the audience. And it's a skill that is vital to the success of any career. So I've written this course with my degrees in communication and 15 years of coaching people, as well as all of my time competing in speech and debate and giving speeches. And I've condensed all of that down into a simple, easy to implement tool that will help you start to take immediate action on writing your speech. I've designed it to accelerate results and have this course walk you through crafting your message from brainstorming to delivery practice. Each module has downloadable guides to help you as well, and this course will walk you through my proven focus framework to help you get results fast. This course is ultimately for people that are looking to find those techniques to help them write successfully dynamic speeches, who are ready to take their career and public image to the next level, and who are ready to learn simple tips to write their speeches faster. My clients who have gone through the course end up writing their speeches in half the time it would have prior to learning these tips and tricks. And we all have presentations and have had people come up to us afterwards telling us that maybe they didn't understand the point they were trying to get, or maybe their boss came up and said your speech just didn't quite land. And nobody wants to repeat those experiences. Those are not fun. But using my years of experience, I'll share techniques that will help you successfully write and deliver your speeches every time. Using the right tools, you'll be well on your way to be an influential speaker. And just for your audience, Steve, I will offer a 20% discount on my digital course.
Very nice of you, Melissa. I appreciate that. I'll certainly put the links below. And I just want to add here before we finish up, nobody is really trying to do this. It's such a skill set because, like we talked about at the outset, people are nervous to do. They avoid it. So it's such an advantage in any career to be good at it because no one else wants to do it. So if you are the person who can do it, it's a way to get a leg up in whatever you do, whether you're in some sort of desk job or whether you're a personal trainer. It seems to be a skill set in which nobody else everyone covets the skill, but no one else is actually trying to attain it. So why not take advantage of it? Melissa, this has been fantastic information. Why don't you give my audience and listeners some more information on a website they can find your course or anywhere they can reach out to you directly?
Yes, so I am on all of the social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. My handle is called Taking Your Stage. Taking Your Stage. And do you do show notes, Steve? Okay, can I just send you the link for you to put them in the show notes?
Awesome. My guest today has been Melissa Entzminger. Thank you so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.